Continuing our look at some lesser known RPGs for the PlayStation 2, we have the first Mana Kame game. Also, sorry if I mispronounced the name of the game. Mana Kame Alchemists of Al-Revis was developed by Gust Co. Ltd. And was published by NIS America in, well, America. Before playing the game, I really knew nothing about it. In fact, it wasn't until after beating the game that I found out it was a spin-off series to the Ulterior Iris series. So, after having played the game, is Mana Kame worth playing? The game's story begins with a young man named Vaughn and his friend Sulfur, who is a magical creature called a mana who looks like a cat. They are discovered living alone by a teacher named Zappel, who helps enroll Vaughn into Al-Revis, the school of alchemy. From there, Vaughn quickly meets some of the other students, such as Jessica, Nikki, and Flay. Most of the story ends up focusing around Vaughn's schooling as he learns about alchemy and befriending his fellow workshop members. It isn't until later where the story starts to focus more on who Vaughn is and where he comes from, since he has no memory of his past. This is something I don't mind, since the other characters Vaughn interacts with have a lot of personality to them. There's Jessica, who loves alchemy but ends up making explosions, Nikki, who would rather play and relax rather than doing her homework, Flay, who keeps failing his classes but always thrives for justice of others, Pamela, who enjoys spooking new students, Roxas, who desires to bring honor back to his family name, Anna, who is quite smart and disciplined despite her age, and Muppy, an alien who wishes to get back home but constantly finds himself in misfortune. The lesser students and teachers can be fun characters as well, with some serving more important roles later on. Vaughn himself isn't too bad. He's kind and has a close bond with Sulfur, while at the same time he doesn't stand out too much compared to everyone else. The world the game creates is pretty cool too, like having a school that is on a floating platform, and students having to make pacts with magical creatures called mana to earn magical powers. So yeah, I quite like the story as it starts off with a more lighthearted tone, but gradually gains a more mature and serious one later on. Plus, I like the different endings because of what they represent to Vaughn's character. Mana Kame is mostly a turn-based RPG. Okay, so let me first explain how progression works. The game is divided up between chapters, with each chapter divided up into weeks. There are a certain amount of weeks in each chapter, with some weeks being events that occurred during the story, but most are class weeks. During a class week, you will have to go to the student affairs to select a class to take. Classes are where you will have to learn how the game works. They kind of act like tutorials. Some of these classes will teach you gathering, better ways to synthesize items, how combat works, and even some will test your skills like quickly navigating an area. Required classes are usually pretty fair or at least not too difficult, but there will be chapters where you get to choose which classes you wish to take. Upon completing a class, you will be graded, and each grade will give you a certain amount of stars on your report card. If you fail to meet the requirements for the chapter on the last class week, you will get detention and will lose some free time. During detention, you will be required to do some annoying and difficult tasks. Should you get detention enough times, you will receive the bad ending to the game. But you shouldn't worry since I've only got detention once and it was on my first playthrough. If you get the required amount of stars for the chapter, you will then earn some free time. And if you reach the required amount early, then you will get some extra free time. During free time, you can take jobs from the board at the student affairs. There are two different kind of jobs you can take: item jobs or monster jobs. Item jobs require that you make a certain amount of item and then deliver it to the person who posted the job, while monster jobs have you venture into dungeons to take on monsters who are basically optional bosses. These jobs can be done in 1 week and will reward you with money, which is actually pretty helpful as some of the monster jobs unlock new recipes, which is also very helpful. Not only that, but during free time you can also venture into dungeons at your own leisure to fight some monsters or gather some items, things we'll get into more later. You can also visit the cafeteria to talk to Kirkop, who will spread rumors about your team. Rumors will give your team a different kind of benefit, like increase in stats, earn more money after a job, or increase your chance of earning items after a random fight. Different rumors will be unlocked by fulfilling random objectives, like getting so far in the game or jumping so many times. Last but not least, you can spend your free time doing character quests, which is a great way to learn more about each character, and each character has 6 character quests to go through throughout the game. By doing all 6 character quests for a character, you will earn their ending once you have beaten the game. Sure, you can skip these if you don't like any of the characters, but to be honest, you're kinda missing out on some fun moments. Not only that, but you're going to want to do the first few character quests once you get Roxas, otherwise you aren't going to be able to use him to his full effectiveness when in fights, and trust me, you're going to want his support and skills. You will have to keep in mind that you can only do one character quest per free time, so losing free time means you lose character quests. Navigating through the game is pretty easy, as you have a menu screen where you can choose to go to any locations in the school as well as going off campus to the dungeons. It's from the campus menu where you can visit the student affairs for jobs and classes, the dormitory for skipping free time if you like, the teachers' rooms where if you need to visit them in order to complete a class, and many other stores. During each chapter, you will want to visit every shop since they may have new recipes for you to buy. So, you will have to go to the student stores, the cafeteria, the infirmary, the campus ground, and the store in the resource dungeon area. The most important place you can visit from the campus menu would be your workshop. At your workshop, you can start your character quest during free time, save your game, or at least it's the most convenient area to save your game, give characters tasks to do, and most importantly, synthesize items. Okay, so the tasks you can have your party members do would be gathering materials in certain areas or work out to earn more AP, which we'll talk more about later. At your cauldron, you can synthesize items, which you first will need the recipe for an item before you can synthesize it. Well, for most items anyway. Sometimes when you synthesize a certain item, one of the characters will comment on that item and give you a new recipe. Or when you see a light bulb next to an item, this means you have a different material that can also be used for this recipe to create an all-new recipe. So when synthesizing an item, you'll have to make sure you have the right materials to make that item. And after you have made that item, you can mass produce the same item as long as you have enough of the materials to do so. Once you have selected your materials, you can then alter the item's ether levels, which is the number in the circle. The ether level can be increased by matching the material's element with one of the elements on the rotating ring, which will require good timing, or decrease the ether level by matching the material with the wrong element. Plus, while trying to match elements, you can also have one of your party members help you out. However, I never really found them to be very helpful, so it's a feature I rarely ever used. Ether levels will give items different properties, like making healing items more effective. Altering ether levels can be quite effective on items like blue metal and black powder, which are also often used in armor and weapon synthesizing, which we'll also get to later on as well. You honestly don't have to worry too much about ether levels for most of the game, minus a class or job. So if it sounds a bit confusing, you don't have to worry too much as it's not too important. Once you get further in the game, you're going to find yourself going back and forth quite a lot between items when you're trying to make more synthesizing. So mass production is quite helpful, as when you mass produce an item, you don't have to worry about matching up the elements, which saves a lot of time. However, you will have to leave your shop and go to the workshop hallway to go to the Anthanor room, where you'll be able to synthesize weapons, armor, and accessories. Once again, you will need the proper materials to make these items, most of which will need other weapons, armor, and accessories to make them. After you have created your equipment, you can then give them some extra attributes, and these attributes will depend on the ether levels of the materials you use to make them. These attributes can range from giving your characters new skills, increasing their attack or defense or other stats, or inflict status elements like poison. And of course, once you've made your equipment, you can equip them to your characters. The annoying part about synthesizing is when you have to go back and forth between the workshop and the Anthanor room, constantly making sure you have enough materials to make new items and equipment, and you will be spending hours synthesizing alone. The most important part to synthesizing items and weapons is that by doing so, you will further expand a character's grow book. Every character has a grow book, which has branching pathways that will be unlocked as you synthesize the right items. Unlocking the item in the grow book will allow your character to earn new skills, earn certain stat boosts, or even give him an extra hit when attacking. Now the grow book is linear, so even if you synthesized a fire ring but not yet the tangerine hat, you can't access the skills on the fire ring in the grow book until you first make that tangerine hat. In order to earn the skills from the grow book, you'll need enough AP to buy these skills, which is why having characters work out can be rather important. While you will be spending about half your time synthesizing, the other half is spent in dungeon-like areas. In these areas, you can use your jumping and slashing more effectively, like jumping to hard-to-reach areas and slashing down grass to further progress in the dungeon. The dungeon has some pretty simple layouts, with a few branching areas from time to time, and thankfully you will have a map to help you out, as well as maps being marked for where you need to go in the dungeon for story and job-related reasons. You will also be doing a lot of gathering as well in dungeons, like digging up veggies, fishing, mining, collecting fruit, and of course finding treasure chests that may have items, money, or more recipes. So it's pretty important to explore in dungeons. While also in dungeons, you will encounter monster battles. You will see these monster blobs roaming around in dungeons, some of them being small and others being bigger, and running into these blobs will start a fight. Some of the small blobs will be blue and others will be red, so when you swipe at a red blob you will start a fight with the monster while blue blobs will simply fade away. If you don't swipe at the blob and instead run into them, then the monsters will have the first turn in the fight. Also, there is a day and night cycle to dungeons, where at night monsters are tougher and the blobs move much faster. So exploring dungeons at night can be quite risky. There may be moments where you find yourself waiting for day to come back around rather than facing the monsters simply because of how obnoxious they are. Fights are turn-based, with characters' turns being indicated by a row of cards at the top of the screen. You can have 6 characters with you in a battle, but only 3 of them can be active at a time. Active characters can defend so they can use their moves later on, attack enemies, and use items and skills. As turns pass, inactive characters will become active and can be switched with active characters, but it's best to use them as supports. There are 2 different moments for character supports: offensive supports and defensive supports. Defensive supports will take the place of a targeted active character, while offensive supports will attack after an active character has attacked and then take their place. Not only that, but when fighting you will fill up a burst gauge, which once full will put you into burst mode. During burst mode your attacks will increase as well as being able to fill up your finishing burst gauge. The finishing burst gauge will have different requirements to fill it up, like dealing combos or using magic, and once the bar is full, an active character will be able to use a special attack that can do some massive damage. Battles start off rather simply, but become much more complicated later on, since characters have their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as unique skills and support skills, like Roxas being able to remove enemy attacks, Jessica's support ability to heal the party, and Flaya's ability to lower an enemy's defense when used as an offensive support. Also, when a character is inactive, they will be able to restore their skill points. Just plain random encounters can actually be kind of difficult, or at least they aren't super easy. Boss fights are quite challenging too, since it's more about having the right kind of characters on your team to deal with the strengths and weaknesses of the boss, as well as their own unique movesets. So if you plan on getting through the game, you're going to need to spend a lot of time keeping your party both well equipped and caught up in their grow books. Beating monsters will give you some AP and money as well as materials, but grinding up monsters is actually much less important compared to gathering materials and synthesizing. Once you have beaten the game, you will unlock New Game Plus, where characters' progress in the grow books will transfer on over into the new game, allowing you to play through the game in about half the time, so you can get all the other endings. Not only that, but there's also a bonus dungeon that will unlock, which is the hardest dungeon in the game. As for its visuals, I find the game to be pretty appealing. The environments are quite colorful as well as being very well detailed. Characters, on the other hand, are sprites. Overworld sprites are more simple, while the sprites in battles have some great detail to them and smooth, fluid animations, which help make the fights quite a flashy spectacle to watch. However, at times, the game does pause during the first turn or when going into burst mode, with a few moments of frame drops as well. I should also mention that the battle sprites quality is just as good when it comes to the enemies. There is also some voice acting, and for the most part, it's pretty good, as there are some experienced voice actors here like Richard Epicard, Liam O'Brien, and Jennifer Skekaguchi. Of all the voices, I'd have to say Tony's is the least natural, and just doesn't hold up as well as everyone else's. The music is quite good as well, as it mixes some great battle themes with atmospheric themes, and a pretty memorable and upbeat school theme. So, would I recommend Monokame Alchemists of Al-Revis? Yes I would, but only to those who have the patience for it. The game has quite the learning curve that may turn some players away, such as games like Dark Souls or Monster Hunter. However, the hardest part to sell would be the huge emphasis on synthesizing. I know there are a fair amount of RPG fans who really don't care too much for the synthesizing that's more simple in other RPGs. Not only that, but there are some flaws in the game as well, like a few moments when the frames drop, quite a few of the more easily accessible materials being quite useless, the grow book being rather linear, and it can also be quite annoying and even tiring to go back and forth between your workshop and the Anthenar room. Oh, and the game can be quite difficult at times, but this is something I don't mind as much. Like I said, it has a large learning curve, so if you put the time into better understanding the mechanics of the game, you will be rewarded. After all, there are some great things to the game. It's quite visually appealing, the combat is complex but rewarding, and focuses more on strategy with unique characters. The story is also quite good, with some very likable and memorable characters, and a very interesting and fun world. In conclusion, if you don't mind spending a lot of time synthesizing, are okay with a challenge, and like a well thought out turn-based battle system, then you will find Monokame to be a rewarding and entertaining game. While it might not be for everyone, Monokame to me is quite the underrated RPG for the PlayStation 2, and I'm glad I gave it a chance. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this review and found it to be rather informative. If you'd like to see more reviews, please check out my channel. And please don't forget to subscribe. And if there are any other PS2 games you'd like to see me review in the future, please leave a suggestion down below. Well, I'm MCB the PS2 Gamer, and I'll see you guys next time.